Free energy now.
Imagine a world in which each home has its own power generator that obtains its energy in such a way that no fuel has to be added. Imagine every vehicle being able to run without ever stopping for fuel. Imagine each appliance having its own power source that never has to be recharged. That is the world of the future. Join with us now as we track our progress towards such a world.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sterling Allen. You can join us online at freeenergyquest.com. We're joined today, August 7th, 2014, by David Puchta of Proton Spin Technologies in California to talk about linear Paul magnetism. Dave's worked for 15 years at Mercedes-Benz in diagnostics, where he says is known by his colleagues as the master tinkerer. And in 2005, ventured into exotic free energy. His work entails scalar waves, anti-gravity, transmutation, nuclear remediation, and creating specific elements on the periodic chart from water. He's also talked about retrofitting Navy ships with algae growth vessels that would provide both fuel for the ship and heal the ocean. I had the enjoyment of hanging around with David Puchta at the Tesla Tech conference this last weekend, and had a great time interfacing with him. He made quite the cannonball splash there, probably made questions for every one of the presenters there at the conference, and turned a lot of heads. We call him the swearing genius. Hopefully we won't get too much or any of the swearing during this segment today. But first, before we get into that, let's do our This Week in Free Energy recap. And this week, actually, we're covering 2 weeks. Starting out with the exotic, we did an excellent interview with Randall Mills a week and a half ago on this show. You definitely want to tune into that, talking about his black light power technology. And they're gearing up for manufacturing within 18 weeks, possibly, or having a production prototype, I should say. That's not necessarily ready for manufacturing, but a production prototype is a major step toward that. They posted videos of their July 21st demonstration, have achieved over 140 times over Unity. That's 140 times over Unity, using only conventional solar cells, and they're powered with fuel based on water. It takes 5 joules to ignite the water fuel powder, and the reaction gives over 700 joules of light energy. And also, they posted a full set of slides for that July 21st demonstration. You're going to want to go check that out. We gave links to that on our blog. Number 2, black light power is number 1. Number 2 in our top 5 is solar hydrogen trends, and we got some major news on them recently as well. On July 22nd, we announced that they published their third-party test results. And before, we said that they were over 1,000 times over Unity, and this time they were able to give the exact number and the name of the third-party tester, TRC Solutions. They're a top 500 company in the United States, and as far as engineering firms go, they're in the top 20-30 worldwide. And just in their gas measurement division, they have over 100 employees, engineers, who go out and do these kinds of tests. And with a 414-watt input, they output 127 cubic feet per minute of hydrogen gas at 97% hydrogen, quantity. They had both qualitative and quantitative analysis done. That's 1,345 times more energy out than in. The thing that's ironic about this is that we are basically the only ones that have published this result. I guess everyone else is too chicken to go there. That just seems too out of this world. And yet, this is the third of the third-party tests that they have done. And people are lining up, are starting to knock on their door and wanting to get more information and move forward with them. So there is some movement going on. They also allowed us to post a video of their hydrogen production during those third-party tests, and you can hear the gas as it escapes what they call Symphony 7, their seventh generation prototype. And it is making a sound, which is phenomenal out of a half-inch aperture, because hydrogen gas is 14 times less dense than air. So that's kind of a reality check that they really are producing gas from their chamber. Some more news from the Tesla Tech conference. George Wiseman, I did a video of him describing Al Throckmorton's over-unity water pump. Water goes in through a one-way check valve into a chamber. Once it goes above a certain mark, the Brown's gas is ignited to push the water through a second one-way check valve, exiting the system. You'll also see David Puchta in that interview, interacting with George Wiseman, talking about this system. I was walking down the hall, actually after George Wiseman's presentation at that conference, which was a phenomenal presentation, giving 30 years of learning that he's done in about 2-3 hours. They gave him some extra time. You can get that DVD from teslatech.info. So I was walking down the hall, and George pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you got to check this out. This could be your new number one in your top 5. This could be turned into a self-loop home generator system if everything checks out." He's going to be replicating it. Vernon Roth is going to be replicating it. Going to be posting a video from Vernon Roth, hopefully any day now, that he gave, and we'll talk about that next week in this show. We posted another video of Valley Energy Star's Qmogen. That's a self-loop motor generator system, 2 kilowatt output. It's 1.5 euro per kilo or per watt price tag, which is very reasonable. And they're looking for collaborators to roll this out worldwide. Another Qmogen, maglev magnet generator by Taiwan Edison Creative Technologies Company Limited. They posted actually a video of their presentation. It was actually made it to some mainstream press over in China. They showed a 7.5 kilowatt system, and the price point would be somewhere around $5,200. I believe that's U.S. Manufactured by Foxconn, which is a major manufacturer of cell phones and other gadgets. So that's a big story, because you have a big player already has done their due diligence up to the plate, in a contract to manufacturing these things, and they're looking at about a year before they're in the marketplace. Highly controversial technology, and I have yet to see one of these things in operation. I'm just waiting for the day. One of these self-loop motor generator systems with extra energy left over to use. A second story we published was a translation by a Chinese article that said 1.5 kilowatt output from 40 watt input. Talk about over unity. And that may have been a mistranslation or misunderstanding of the person writing the story. That's my guess, because that's a little bit hard to believe even for me. But if they've got data to support it, the will work of nature has a lot of plugs, and if you can do it right, you can harness that will work of nature, and voila, you get energy to use. And also, we corrected their price tag. Earlier, I had misstated that. That's another news story we had this week, or that last week. Today we published a story about the QEG, latest discoveries and developments, some updates on them. They've got quite a few teams around the world. It shows their different logos. I would guess around 12 different groups that are pursuing that technology. They gave an explanation for about their findings to the non-technical audience as well as to the engineers, and also talked about or showed a video of their QEG core manufacturing at Torelco, showing the circuits and the converter, converting raw power to usable power by Tesla Energy Solutions. So a lot of movement there, kind of been holding back on the news for quite a while, and then all of a sudden, wham, we got a big release today. Aurora Tech at Tesla Tech, I showed a video of him, Bill Alec, demonstrating a transformer that outputs more energy than is put into it in the range of 4 watts. That's not too sexy, but it's significant. You can power devices with that. 125% efficient. Phase angle of 92 degrees for those of you who know what that means. Posted a video of Brian Pinette reporting on the first demonstration at the Tesla Tech conference. I also saw a demonstration later. We videotaped that, put both of those videos up on the 3rd. I also showed a video of kind of the settings at the Tesla Tech conference, walking through, showing the building, the booths, the conference hall, just so you can kind of see what it was like there, get a little feel, and hopefully go next year. They have excellent conferences. They've been doing it for almost 2 decades, I believe. I talked earlier about George Wiseman, and we posted a link, a chance to win his ER50 electrolyzer, valued at $800, assembled by him. I was on Coast to Coast last week, Wednesday night, talking about free energy, and basically it was a version of presentation I gave at the Tesla Tech conference on Wednesday of last week. We posted a link to a new ebook that's available about extraluminal transmission systems of Tesla and Alexanderson. And so you definitely want to check that out. Keshi's Cup of Life, made in China. Cups release fuels into the water, which is energized. If you drink the water, you don't need to eat, but you still get nourishment and energy for your body. I'm sorry I'm laughing. It's just a little bit hard to believe. But, we just put it out there and let people check it out and see if it's real. Be curious to see what kind of validation we have of that. Quantum space engine might work, NASA test suggests. This is exotic free energy technologies addressed by NASA. Researchers have been looking at unorthodox means of propulsion without propellant, ranging from solar cells to quantum energy via wormholes. Put up a link to the interview I did on this show with Ralph Ring and Marsha Brown about their pods. That was quite interesting. And a magnet motor by a paranoid inventor in California. Just a brief mention on that. And I also posted a story about Mormon pioneers as a metaphor for free energy birthing. Also, just want to mention there's a little box challenge. Basically, if you can produce a box that can generate or convert 5 watts in 1 cubic inch, Google will give you $1 million. And then yesterday we posted a link to Ignition Secrets, a DVD by Aaron Murakami. Check that out. And George Wiseman actually mentioned that in conversation about this work that's being done with this over Unity water pump that I mentioned earlier. And then finally, I want to mention, we put up a link that I mentioned on the Coast to Coast show, a company called Quant, or actually the Quant is the name of the sports limousine that has now been approved for road driving and has been lined up for serious production. This is a car that their video promotion says runs on salt water. That's a bit hard to believe, and as I got looking at it, it actually isn't running on salt water. It's a component in their fuel cell battery technology on board. So basically, it's a component of the fuel cell, which is easier to believe. But boy, talk about a nice-looking car. It's even sexier than the Tesla Roadster, I think. So there's a few other off-topic things, but I want to get over to our guests. We went a little bit long here because we've been a couple of weeks on this show. We have with us David Puchta. David, you on?
Yes, I am, Sterling.
All right. Now, we are going to talk about some crazy stuff with you. You've got all kinds of things. We could go for hours and hours with David Puchta. And we're going to have to limit it to about 40 minutes today and give kind of the best of what you got and what you're willing to talk about publicly. And so I'm just going to open the mic and ask questions as we go along. So go ahead and hit it.
Thank you, Sterling. Thank you for having me on the show. And I'll just second the Tesla Tech conference was probably an extremely important experience for any young inventor or seasoned inventor or theorist to entertain. The consciousness there was unbelievable. It gave you a stage to put your thoughts out there, to listen to thoughts, and to validate your life work and other people's life work. So I would recommend Tesla Tech for anybody next year. And at the end of my mini presentations, I was asked to speak next year, so I will be doing that for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I kept telling people that you'll be speaking there next year.
Well, a lot of things through the conference were validations for myself, in how energy is produced. We understand the production of the 0 point field. A lot of people are trying to gather the 0 point field, but once you start producing that field and amplifying it, the amplitude of it, you start understanding aspects of what it can do. And what we do is pretty simple. The basis of the company, the IP holdings of the company, I'll start from the beginning, are proton spin technologies. You've interviewed me before on that. The storefront is hydrogen injection systems. Pretty straightforward. We take this energy platform, which is a gravitational wave, and we produce hydrogen deuteride. We produce a heavy hydrogen fuel, or we produce a biological algae from salt water or brackish water, and we turn that salt water or brackish water into a burnable fuel. And we don't need sunlight. We don't need big, huge ponds. All we need is this energy platform, which is linear pole magnetism. We'll talk about that in depth later. I'm just giving a summary to grow biological elements. We've proven that all metals come from bacteria. A group that I'm in, Biometals in Germany, they prove that iron comes from bacteria. I've proven everything else can come from bacteria with the proverbial words of frequency and resonance. And we're not going to get too much into that because it's been talked about several times by several people, but everybody understands what frequency is and understands what resonance is. When you have the right frequency chain and you have the right resonance chain, you can synthesize pretty much any element. Now, to validate just that simple statement, through the Tesla Tech this year, the main subjects were 0 point energy, ancient Egyptian energy, and transmutation of elements. That was the three main subjects and the philosophy of all of those. And they all have a common thread throughout them, is being able to tap into this organic energy. Whether you want to call it, there's 50 names for it, but it all means the same thing, the 0 point field. So when you can do that, you can transmutate elements, you can grow elements. Guys have seen precious metals and normal metals in the bottom of their fuel cells. They can't figure it out. Well, what it's happening from the simplicity of it is when you pulse an HHO cell, you have the on time, which is electromagnetism. Then you have the off time, which in physics would be called the electromagneto effect. And that's a pretty prestigious side of physics. There's already been 50 products that are on the market that you put in your hands from the linear magneto effect. A magnet is one of them. You put a magnet in an electromagnetic field, you heat it up, cools down, you get a magnet. Okay? Pretty
really
simple
quick,
step.
I want to just take a quick footnote because we've not given the audience that is not familiar with you yet a feel that you're not just talking theory here. You have built stuff and prototype stuff and each actually have product on the market. So you're speaking from experience and evidence that you have personally witnessed and manufactured.
Correct. I thank you for digressing there. Everything that I'm going to talk about in this radio and in past conferences is from observation and from validatable lab reports, and it can be duplicated any given time. If I say something that's theoretical, I will clearly admit to it up front that this is a theory, and this is a theory based on observation that we've already seen. So thank you for bringing that to the table, Sterling. In the linear magneto effect, these guys are seeing transmutation of elements. They're seeing different things. And this is nothing new in physics. It's just been maybe new to a young inventor. I don't want to say a young as in age, but maybe just young in the arts of messing around with HHO or messing around with electromagnetism. But physics has studied this for a long time, and they just really don't understand it. In the platform that we're here to talk about is linear pole magnetism. Linear, meaning linear, the energy is consistent with no count. It means it doesn't come back around again. It just goes and resonates, okay? When you have AC or DC, AC has count, 60 hertz. It's going to go and come back. We know that. It self-resonates. In DC electricity, it's pretty much a straight, dead-headed run through the light bulb and then back to the battery again, and that's where the energy flows through. So DC technically doesn't resonate. In the linear magneto effect, when they hit a crystal or a rock or an element with an electromagnetic field, it'll resonate back organically. For a little bit of time, it'll send off a signature, a near magnetic signature. So that's how MRIs work. There's a lot of references to this particular technology. In linear
I'm just a little bit confused here because you're calling linear this thing of going in one direction, and yet you were just describing the linear magneto effect. When you hit a rock, it resonates back. That sounds like going back and forth.
Well, it's not. There's no coupling there. You can't keep it going, unless you keep pulsing it. That's just what they name it, okay? Because that's their name. In probably some micro measurement, that energy that bounces back continues to go, but you may not be able to measure it. But it doesn't go back to the source, okay? So in linear pole magnetism, this energy platform, the energy, it has a resonance factor to it, but it continues to go forward. So you have a product, you have the ability to perform that off time all the time. Okay?
We'll have to pick that up when we come back from break.
Known worldwide as the most consistently fascinating, informative, and unique program on radio, the Jeff Rense program can be yours to listen to anytime, anywhere, whenever you want to hear it. For pennies a day, our subscribers can download any of Jeff's thousands of programs featuring a treasury of newsmakers, researchers, eyewitnesses, and incredible subjects, all in MP3 commercial-free, crystal-clear 56-bit digital sound, and take these often unforgettable programs with them wherever they go. As a subscriber, you can also listen live at airtime, online, anywhere in the world, or browse through our archives of over 6,000 hours of legendary broadcasts. Subscribe now by taking the link at the top of Rense.com and enrich your mind with the most unique panorama of vital information and the best independent, honest journalism in radio. Look for the Subscribe Now link on Rense.com and give yourself the knowledge you need for these unprecedented times.
Presently, the number one technology in our top 5 exotic free energy technologies listing at top5energy.com is what we call hydroxy technology, in which onboard electrolysis creates oxygen and hydrogen. Unseparated, it's also called Brown's gas or HHO. By then adding this to the fuel, the mileage and horsepower of an engine can be significantly improved while reducing emissions. One of the reasons for this is that Brown's gas breaks down the larger chain fuel molecules so they can be utilized and not exhausted, unburned. There are many companies worldwide that are making and selling these hydroxy systems. We've compiled a list for you at besthydroxytechnologies.com. When you find one you like, be sure to tell them that Sterling Allen of PES referred you. Again, that's besthydroxytechnologies.com.
Free energy, now!
Welcome back. We are talking with David Puchta of Proton Spin Technologies. And I just had somebody chime in saying we need 2 hours for this show. I wish we had 2 hours for this one. And maybe we'll have to have David come back for a part 2. But let's just keep churning away. David, go ahead and pick it up, hit resume, and keep plowing ahead.
Well, thank you, Sterling. I appreciate that. Makes me feel good that somebody's actually listening to what I have to put down. That was the general resonance through the Tesla Tech Conference is even in my own question and answer phase, I was able to validate some people's life work that may not have looked at things in the fashion that they need to, but when I see an observation that is in front of your eyes and I can look at somebody else's work that they've been working on, it's just very difficult not to give them an attaboy or a helping hand in that open source spirit. There's a lot of things that I will never open source, but there's a lot of technology components that I will open source because I want to see a better place for everybody. I'm a humanitarian. You know that about me. I've said it before, and I will say it till the day that I die. I want to see the world be a better place, and that's where we are at company-wise, is you send me a PO, I'll build you a product. It's that simple. This is not theory. This is reality. And we'll talk about company stuff at the very end. But let's get back to the point at hand. The point is that this energy platform is clearly different. It shows where the anomalies happened in cold fusion. It shows what the anomalies are in magnetic motors. It shows where a lot of different anomalies have happened in metal transmutation. And it just gives you a very clear point to go to. And once you do the math and you do the understanding and you back all of the different things from the cross-disciplinary physics that I ponder on a regular basis, from biology to electromagnetism to my own energy platform, you have to put everything in its perspective. You know, what grows life? What needs to grow life? What sustains life? What sustains energy? What kills energy? All these different things are put into perspective. And the understanding after the observation has taken place is very clear. And it doesn't always match theory. That's a given statement. But this is where I stand, is from the observational physics. So let's get back to what a linear magnetism does. It gives you the off time all the time. And now, remember, we created AC electricity and we created DC electricity. Those are man-made, and we synthesize those from the observations from nature. We can go from Rhodes to the latest Meyer and Tesla in between. We can go Schallberger. We can go all these different guys who have Faraday ultimately started with nature. And that's exactly what I've done here, is go back to the basics, go back in the peripheral time machine in your brain, and go back 7,000 years, maybe 15,000 years, and figure out where our discourse happened and why it happened. Once that was understood, and it was basically a backwards ladder. I don't think Michael Faraday or Nikola Tesla could have gotten here without AC or DC first. They may have, but you needed to be able to see. And the modern electronics have been able to allow me to see where the missing link was at. And so it's really interesting how this is taking place. If we have 100 years of industrial revolution, and every tree hugger out there will let you know that we ruined the planet and we're on a discourse to kill ourselves. So, but we needed that. We needed to be able to understand, build an infrastructure that we can build onto. I'm not saying that linear magnetism is a replacement of everything we have. I think it's an enhancement of everything that we have to go forward so we can understand both sides of the energy. Just like we have products for AC, just like we have products for DC. Okay? So, those disclaimers put up front, and I try to say those as best as I can, as short as I can.
So let me just jump in here really quick. What you're saying is you're introducing an entire new genre of electricity. We've got AC, we've got DC, and now we're going to have linear magneto effect?
Linear magnetism. And so you could, the coined phrase is very simple. Linear pole magnetism. As you see the energy move over an oscilloscope, it rolls in a helical DNA fashion.
Hey, David, did you just turn your mic to speaker because your quality just went to the pot all of a sudden?
No, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, it's back to normal.
Okay, so the energy moves in a rotation fashion, and so that's the revolutions of linear pole magnetism. And that fourth dimension of the energy is where this is my understanding, but I'm not finished with the math, so it's theory, is that you had Michael Faraday, you have Nikola Tesla, you have Gibbs' law, you have a handful of others that have come up with energy equations, and then you have this fourth dimension of energy understanding. And bringing in that third dimension of energy is where you can do the math and quantify something in a different plane. To answer your question indirectly, I have oscilloscope patterns on my YouTube channel that you can post later that shows the energy platform. And one of the questions that I got over the entire Tesla Tech conference was, how many channels are on your scope? And I said, well, there's 4 channels on the scope, but 1 is being used, and there's multiple lines of energy coming through that 1 channel, giving you the view of a multidimensional energy platform, not just one line or AC, you go positive and negative. You've got multiple channels coming through one wire. So that shows that the energy has a 3-dimensional aspect to it. And something that has a 3-dimensional aspect to it and can be expanded all the way up into a scope shot that has all the references of it, of a 3-dimensional plasma energy on the oscilloscope, it shows you that the energy can expand and contract within itself. And that's where the resonation and the push forward comes through. So back to what can you do with it? Okay? This is not just radio static from atmosphere that, okay, we got something on the scope here. When you fire a light bulb, the light bulb is cold. When you run a motor, the motor is cold. In almost 90% of the energy circuit does not produce an EMF. It absorbs an EMF. You put a EMF meter up to it and it will go to 0. I'm going to jump to a very important known subject right there. During one of the conferences, at the end of the conference, they had a Marco Rodin coil winding little seminar for an hour. And I asked, my question is if I can test a Rodin coil as it's running and rotating the magnet. This is a very clear understanding.
Okay, it looks like we've got another break. We will pick up when we come back in about 4 minutes. Welcome back from the break. We are talking with David Puchta of Proton Spin Technologies based in San Diego, California. And I want to also mention, before we get to this back to the final segment, his YouTube channel is Hydrogen 4 Power, where the number 4, not spelled out, it's H Hydrogen 4 Power. So the letter H and then Hydrogen 4 Power. David, we've just got a few minutes left. Go ahead and give us continue where you were, and also we want to hear about where you're at in your company right now.
Okay, so let's go really quick here. at the demonstration, the EMFs coming around microrodent's coil, were, pretty much off the chart around the coil, as electromagnetism would show. But what was to, my surprise, because I've never wound a microrodent coil, I've never studied microrodent's math, but I know who Marco Rodin is, and I know that he has math, I know all that stuff, but I just have never studied it. When I brought the EMF meter up to the center rotating magnet, it pulled to zero. I mean, it went to zero extremely hard from about 6 inches up. Okay, what that's showing you is the magnet getting hot because it's being infused with more magnetic energy. It's been proven in theory and in practice that a magnet is filled with zero-point energy. A magnet is an eternal energy. Now, if you were to take that same magnet from microrodent's coil and put it under a flame and heat it up to the same temperature as it was spinning, it would lose its magnetism. So it was getting hot from absorbing the zero-point field. That's where probably the best demonstration of the absorbing of the zero-point field is today. In our fashion, we produced that energy field. And when you produce that energy field, it's the contrary. It's cold. The electricity is cold going forward. So that's all I wanted to say is a personal understanding of what Marco Rodin is doing. A shout out and a little validation to all the guys that are working on that, including the guys that are working on other technologies, including Stan Meyer's technology, which you said in the last radio station we're having a open source, hands-on Stan Meyer workshop October 18th and 19th on Max Miller's channel, irondmax.com, Stanley Meyer's web shop. Just get there. You guys are going to learn some stuff. If you're messing around with Stan Meyer stuff, bring it. We'll help you get it going. That's all I have to say on that subject, because I want you to know where we are company-wise. Where we are company-wise is we're building systems, and we are still in R&D on new systems. So we have things that are on the ground, and we're continuing to improve the technology. And the quandrum has always been, where do you take a company into a business, and how do you do that? Well, doing it by doing products that people can put in their hands. They can touch them, they can feel them, and take the voodoo off of all of this free energy quandrum, because we're using half of it now. Right now, we're using half of the energy potential. We just need to access and use the other half, and that's what I'm proposing in linear Paul magnetism, and that's what I'm bringing to the table in products, is using that other half of the energy to benefit pretty much everything. And if you can have, from the most essential, water remediation, to pure elements being grown as needed, those are things that we can do for our planet. In my last talks, we talked about algae remediation for the ocean. We've talked about these things that seem to be, tree hugger, spaceship, I love the world type, here's my sign for Greenpeace. Nobody knows how to get there. These are observations, like you said. In that same sentence, in that same spirit of everything that we're doing, we have to sit back and understand how to produce products to benefit the world. And I'm going to leave you and everybody with a question. And the question is really simple. Has humanity ever given back to Earth and repaired or given back to Earth something that we didn't screw up in the first place? And I believe the answer is no. There's nothing that we've done. We plant trees in the forest. Why? Because we cut down the trees. We've amended soils because we screwed them up in the first place. We've made fisheries because we've overfished. We need to learn how to give back. And the byproduct, you have it on a commercial here. There's a radiation remediation algae. There's algae, there's things that we can do, and the byproduct of bloomy is fish food. If that's what it takes to give our reef tanks their food back, it's our responsibility. We took their food. We took their food before they could eat it. It soaks down through the sand bed, soaks into our oil wells, and that's where we get our crude oil from. That's not theory. Physics has proven that our oil comes from algae. We need to give back. It's a big, simple cycle, and I'll leave on this cycle. The oil sinks down through the sand beds. We suck the oil out. First thing that happens, we lose our fish. We need fish to urinate in salt water to create the biological reaction to create ice. If the chemical reaction to create ice is ammonium nitrate and salt water, which is in a boo-boo pack, you crack it, stays cold for temporarily, then the chemical reaction goes away. The same thing happens in our polar ice caps, okay? As we burn that fossil fuel, the fossil fuel makes our atmosphere more carbon conductive. As we use radio waves and electromagnetism in our atmosphere to communicate, including this call, our ionosphere gets more carbon conductive. It stops the natural linear energy from coming into the planet. If it stops the linear energy at 2.1 amps, it will stop growing this algae, which produces our oxygen. It gives us the signature needed for a gravitational wave. If we stop growing this algae, we could lose our oxygen. We lose our oxygen, we're done. If we don't have oxygen, we don't have ozone to eat the carbon. That permeable cloud could stay there for a lot of years. All we have to do is give back. It's as simple as that. Give back to our planet. In all of this technology, that is the ultimate conclusion. It has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with growing gold. It has nothing to do with free cars. It has nothing to do with any of that stuff. It has to do with a rock-solid, clear path of giving back so we can sustain our life here and reverse the chain that we created.
Really quick, you've mentioned a few terms, and I want to get clarification. Bloomy is a trademark of your company, correct?
Bloomy is B-L-E-W, which is either the fuel or the process. And blue being a past tense word, you can market that word from as sexual or as Christian or Catholic or whatever your religion is as you want, to just being a past tense word. And the algae's blue. Me, M-E, is microbial electrolysis. So bloomy is coming from microbial electrolysis, which creates electricity. Hydro-me is the same thing. Hydro-me, hydro, meaning from water. M-E, microbial electrolysis. So hydro-me is the energy platform and the electrolytic cell combined. Bloomy is the fuel or the process to create the fuel.
And this terminology we were talking about earlier, linear magneto effect, is this general terminology that a lot of people are chasing, or is this something that you specifically have coined and are pursuing?
No, this is a registered term in physics. You can type up the linear magneto effect, and you can start from Wikipedia to your oldest science books. And they will
about
have
linear Paul magnetism?
Linear Paul magnetism is my own coined term, and it's spelt out Paul, linear, but the word Paul, because I'm Catholic, and or pole, because it's a linear pole energy. The energy goes down the wire in 4 phases. Or, meaning pole from dirt. Magnetism, I've defined the spelling of it to be different. Magna with an A and tism with a Z-U-M, because the Z is denoting a gravitational wave. This is a separation from electromagnetism, which is not a gravitational wave, to a magnetism, which is a gravitational wave coming from the magma, and gravitational.
You still don't have a website?
I don't prefer a website right now. I like YouTube. It's kind of a vent for me. I put up videos that probably I shouldn't, but I just do.
That's where you get the term, the reputation of swearing genius.
Well, yes, it comes from having a block to hide things in ignorance, and then it also gives me a porthole. If guys are messing around with technology and they look past that, they can see that there's maybe things they're working on, maybe some validation. It's kind of my quiet open source way of doing things, and
your videos are not easy to follow. You kind of assume that people know what you're talking about.
Yes, you're right. I'm not interested in giving you an exact roadmap of how everything's done, but I'll just show you that it can be done. So just keep working, keep moving towards a common goal.
Well, David, we really appreciate you coming on. This has been a great interview. And any final closing word before we end this segment?
Yes, be at Tesla Tech next year and be at Stan Meyer's workshop in October.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Free Energy Now, brought to you by PES, Pure Energy Systems. You may access past archives and upcoming show info at freeenergynow.net and join us for our daily news at freeenergynews.com. We invite you to see our directory of energy technologies at peswiki.com. That's peswiki.com. PES, the Pure Energy Systems Information Network.
Maglev magnet generator by Taiwan Edison, Creative Technologies Company Limited. They posted actually a video of their presentation. It was actually made it to some mainstream press over in China. They showed a 7.5 kilowatt system, and the price point would be somewhere around $5,200. I believe that's U.S. Manufactured by Foxconn, which is a major manufacturer of cell phones and other gadgets. So that's a big story, because you have a big player already has done their due diligence up to the plate, in a contract to manufacturing these things, and they're looking at about a year before they're in the marketplace. Highly controversial technology, and I have yet to see one of these things in operation. I'm just waiting for the day. One of these self-loop motor generator systems with extra energy left over to use. A second story we published was a translation by a Chinese article that said 1.5 kilowatt output from 40 watt input. Talk about over unity. And that may have been a mistranslation or misunderstanding of the person writing the story. That's my guess, because that's a little bit hard to believe even for me. But if they've got data to support it, the will work of nature has a lot of plugs, and if you can do it right, you can harness that will work of nature, and voila, you get energy to use. And also, we corrected their price tag. We call them the swearing genius. Hopefully we won't get too much or any of the swearing during this segment today. But first, before we get into that, let's do our This Week in Free Energy recap. And this week, actually, we're covering 2 weeks. Starting out with the exotic, we did an excellent interview with Randall Mills a week and a half ago on this show. You definitely want to tune into that, talking about his black light power technology. And they're gearing up for manufacturing within 18 weeks, possibly, or having a production prototype, I should say. That's not necessarily ready for manufacturing, but a production prototype is a major step toward that. They posted videos of their July 21st demonstration. Have achieved over 140 times over Unity. That's 140 times over Unity, using only conventional solar cells, and they're powered to fuel based on water. It takes 5 joules to ignite the water fuel powder, and the reaction gives over 700 joules of light energy. And also, they posted a full set of slides for that July 21st demonstration. You're going to want to go check that out. We gave links to that on our blog. Number 2, black light power is number 1. Number 2 in our top 5 is solar hydrogen trends, and we got some major news on them recently as well. On July 22nd, we announced that they published their third-party test results. And before, we said that they were over 1,000 times over Unity, and this time they were able to give the exact number and the name of the third-party tester.
Free energy now.
Imagine a world in which each home has its own power generator that obtains its energy in such a way that no fuel has to be added. Imagine every vehicle being able to run without ever stopping for fuel. Imagine each appliance having its own power source that never has to be recharged. That is the world of the future. Join with us now as we track our progress towards such a world.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Sterling Allen. You can join us online at freeenergyquest.com. We're joined today, August 7th, 2014, by David Puchta of Proton Spin Technologies in California to talk about linear Paul magnetism. David's worked for 15 years at Mercedes-Benz in diagnostics, where he says is known by his colleagues as the master tinkerer. And in 2005, ventured into exotic free energy. His work entails scalar waves, anti-gravity, transmutation, nuclear remediation, and creating specific elements on the periodic chart from water. He's also talked about retrofitting Navy ships with algae growth vessels that would provide both fuel for the ship and heal the ocean. I had the enjoyment of hanging around with David Puchta at the Tesla Tech conference this last weekend, and had a great time interfacing with him. He made quite the cannonball splash there, probably made questions for every one of the presenters there at the conference, and turned a lot of heads. Hydrogen gas is 14 times less dense than air, so that's kind of a reality check that they really are producing gas from their chamber. Some more news from the Tesla Tech conference. George Wiseman, I did a video of him describing Al Throckmorton's over Unity water pump. Water goes in through a one-way check valve into a chamber. Once it goes above a certain mark, the Brown's gas is ignited to push the water through a second one-way check valve, exiting the system. You'll also see David Puchta in that interview, interacting with George Wiseman, talking about this system. I was walking down the hall, actually after George Wiseman's presentation at that conference, which was a phenomenal presentation, giving 30 years of learning that he's done in about 2-3 hours. They gave him some extra time. You can get that DVD from teslatech.info. So I was walking down the hall, and George pulled me aside and said, hey, you got to check this out. This could be your new number 1 in your top 5. This could be turned into a self-loop home generator system if everything checks out. He's going to be replicating it. Vernon Roth's going to be replicating it. Going to be posting a video from Vernon Roth, hopefully any day now, that he gave, and we'll talk about that next week in this show. We posted another video of Valley Energy Star's Qmogen. That's a self-loop motor generator system, 2 kilowatt output. It's €1.5 per kilo or per watt price tag, which is very reasonable, and they're looking for collaborators to roll this out worldwide. Another Qmogen, TRC Solutions. They're a top 500 company in the United States, and as far as engineering firms go, they're in the top 20-30 worldwide. And just in their gas measurement division, they have over 100 employees, engineers who go out and do these kinds of tests. And with a 414 watt input, they output 127 cubic feet per minute of hydrogen gas at 97% hydrogen, I guess, would you say quantity? They had both qualitative and quantitative analysis done. That's 1,345 times more energy out than in. The thing that's ironic about this is that we are basically the only ones that have published this result. I guess everyone else is too chicken to go there. It just seems too out of this world. And yet, this is the third of the third-party tests that they have done. And people are lining up, are starting to knock on their door and wanting to get more information and move forward with them. So there is some movement going on. They also allowed us to post a video of their hydrogen production during those third-party tests, and you can hear the gas as it escapes what they call Symphony 7, their seventh generation prototype, and it is making a sound, which is phenomenal out of a half-inch aperture, because